The story surrounding Timothy Busfield isn't just about one allegation. It's about how multiple reports, spanning decades, are now being examined together for the first time. What began as a single investigation has expanded into something far more complex, involving newly surfaced claims, past legal disputes, and questions about how allegations are handled when they emerge years apart. According to publicly filed court documents, prosecutors now argue that these separate reports may point to a broader pattern, while Busfield himself has publicly denied all wrongdoing. And what makes this case especially unusual isn't just who is involved, but how long some of these accusations stayed outside the legal system and why they're being revisited now. The most recent developments began in January, when Timothy Busfield voluntarily surrendered to authorities in Albuquerque, New Mexico, following the issuance of an arrest warrant. According to a statement from the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office, Busfield was charged with 2 counts of criminal sexual contact involving a minor and 1 count of child abuse. Prosecutors have since requested that he remain detained while awaiting trial. These charges stem from allegations involving twin boys, both minors at the time, whose identities have not been made public. Court filings state that the investigation began after a medical professional alerted authorities, triggering a formal review by law enforcement. But just one day after Busfield surrendered, court records revealed something unexpected. In a pretrial detention motion filed on January 14th, prosecutors introduced a newly reported allegation, separate from the original case. According to that filing, the father of another alleged victim contacted law enforcement on January 13th, stating that his daughter, now an adult, reported inappropriate conduct that allegedly occurred years earlier while she was a teenager in California. The motion claims the incident took place during an audition at a regional theater founded by Busfield in the 1980s. The father told investigators that, at the time, the family did not contact police, a decision he now says he regrets. Prosecutors allege that Busfield asked the family not to involve law enforcement and instead seek therapy. The father, himself a therapist, reportedly believed at the time that this was the best course of action. It's important to note, these claims have not yet been adjudicated in court, and Busfield has not entered a plea regarding this newly disclosed allegation. However, prosecutors argue that this report is relevant because it adds historical context to the current charges, and this is where the case becomes more complicated because, according to court documents, this is not the first time Busfield has faced allegations of inappropriate behavior, even though many of them never resulted in criminal convictions. Public records show that in the 1990s, Busfield was involved in a defamation lawsuit connected to an accusation made by a teenage film extra. That civil dispute was eventually settled, with no criminal conviction resulting. Another allegation, mentioned in the current arrest warrant, dates back to 2012, when a woman accused Busfield of inappropriate contact in a public setting. Prosecutors at the time declined to file charges, citing insufficient evidence. None of those earlier cases resulted in jail time, but prosecutors now argue that viewed together, these past reports may demonstrate what they describe as a concerning pattern, a claim that Busfield and his legal team strongly dispute. In a video posted before turning himself in, Busfield publicly denied all allegations, stating that the claims were false and that he intended to fight them in court. Meanwhile, the prosecution has taken a firm stance. In a detention motion, they argue that releasing Busfield while awaiting trial could pose a risk, citing what they describe as repeated alleged behavior over time. A judge has not yet made a final ruling on that request. What's still unclear, and what the court will ultimately have to decide, is how much weight these older, previously unresolved claims should carry in the current case. And that question sits at the center of everything that happens next. To understand why prosecutors are placing so much emphasis on timing, it helps to look at how the current investigation unfolded, and why earlier reports did not immediately lead to criminal charges. According to the arrest warrant, the parents of the twin boys first became concerned after changes in their children's behavior. Acting on advice from legal counsel, they took the boys to a hospital, where professionals reportedly suggested the children may have been subjected to inappropriate boundary violations. At that stage, however, authorities determined that the information available did not meet the threshold for formal charges under their criteria at the time. This is a critical point, and one that often causes confusion in cases. Involving minors, a lack of immediate charges does not necessarily mean an allegation is deemed false. It can also mean that investigators believe more corroboration, disclosures, or documentation are needed before moving forward months later. According to court records, the situation changed in late 2025. The boy's mother filed a police report and contacted Child Protective Services, stating that both children had disclosed inappropriate conduct occurring over a period of time. Around the same period, one of the boys reportedly shared similar disclosures with a counselor. Medical and therapeutic notes referenced in the warrant describe symptoms consistent with emotional distress, including anxiety and recurring fears. Again, it's important to be precise here. These descriptions come from publicly filed documents, not courtroom testimony, and they have not yet been tested through cross-examination. But prosecutors argue that these disclosures, taken together, prompted authorities to reopen the investigation. This renewed review eventually led to the arrest warrant issued in early January, and then came the unexpected addition. When the pretrial detention motion was filed, prosecutors included the California allegation not as a separate charge, but as context. Their argument is not that every prior report should be treated as a conviction, but that the court should consider whether repeated, independently reported incidents over many years raise concerns about potential risk. Defense attorneys, meanwhile, typically challenge this approach, arguing that uncharged or dismissed allegations should not influence pretrial detention decisions. This tension between public safety considerations and the presumption of innocence is at the heart of many high-profile cases like this one. Adding another layer is Busfield's professional background. For decades, he worked in environments that involve young performers, including film sets and theater programs. Prosecutors argue that these settings require heightened responsibility and oversight, while the defense is expected to argue that professional proximity alone does not imply misconduct. Studios have also responded. A representative for Warner Bros. Television stated that the company takes all allegations seriously and cooperates fully with law enforcement, emphasizing its policies regarding the safety of minors on set. No public statement has indicated that Busfield was employed at the time the allegation surfaced. Meanwhile, the court must decide whether Busfield should remain detained while awaiting trial, a decision that hinges not on guilt, but on factors like flight risk and potential danger to the community. That ruling could shape the pace and direction of the case going forward, and it raises a broader question that extends beyond this one. Individual. How should the justice system handle allegations that surface years apart, especially when some were previously reported but never prosecuted? As this case moves forward, much of what happens next will depend on how the court evaluates credibility, timelines, and corroboration, especially when allegations span different years, locations, and circumstances. Prosecutors will likely focus on consistency in court filings. They suggest that although the reports come from different periods, they share similarities in setting and alleged behavior. From their perspective, those parallels may help explain why they are seeking pretrial detention rather than release. Defense attorneys, on the other hand, are expected to emphasize separation. They typically argue that allegations separated by decades, involving different individuals and contexts, should not be treated as a unified narrative, particularly when some were never charged or were dismissed due to limited evidence. This legal push and pull is not unusual, but it does shape public perception. When multiple claims emerge close together, they often feel connected, even before a court has ruled on their relevance or reliability. That creates a challenging environment for jurors, judges, and the public alike. Another factor the court may consider is delay in reporting. Experts widely acknowledge that delayed disclosure is common in cases involving minors, especially when power dynamics or authority figures are involved. At the same time, courts must carefully assess whether delays affect the reliability of evidence and testimony. There is no automatic conclusion, and that's why these cases are often decided slowly, through detailed hearings rather than rapid judgments. Busfield's public denial also plays a role in how the case is unfolding. In a video recorded before surrendering to authorities, he stated that the allegations were false and said he planned to challenge them in court. Public statements like these do not determine legal outcomes, but they can influence the tone of the proceedings and the strategies used by both sides. As of now, no trial has begun. What exists are filings, motions, and competing narratives, each framed through legal language designed to persuade a judge, not the public. That distinction matters, because court documents are not verdicts, they are arguments, and the outcome will ultimately depend on evidence presented under oath, subject to challenge and scrutiny. What this case highlights most clearly is how complex accountability becomes. When allegations surface across long periods of time, it forces courts to balance multiple principles at once, protecting potential victims, safeguarding due process, and resisting the urge to draw conclusions before evidence is fully examined. Regardless of the final outcome, the proceedings will likely be studied as an example of how the legal system handles historical allegations in modern contexts, particularly when they involve public figures. In the next video, we'll take a closer look at how pretrial detention decisions are made, what standards judges apply, and why someone can be held or released without a determination of guilt. That deeper legal framework may explain not just what's happening here, but how similar cases are handled across the country.